The morning of October 12th arrived in Greenfield, a small town nestled in the rolling hills of rural Pennsylvania, with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel alive. The maple trees lining Oakwood Elementary School's parking lot burned bright orange and red, their leaves dancing in the gentle breeze as parents dropped off their children for another school day. 10-year-old Lily Harper climbed out of her mother's sedan, her purple backpack bouncing against her shoulders as she waved goodbye. "Love you, Mom," Lily called out, her blonde ponytail swinging as she turned toward the school entrance. Jennifer Harper watched her daughter disappear through the double doors, the same way she had every morning for the past 3 years. She never imagined it would be the last normal moment of her life. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the school buses had completed their routes through the winding country roads that connected Greenfield's scattered neighborhoods. Lily was supposed to get off at the corner of Maple Street and River Road, a quiet intersection just 2 blocks from her house. Her older brother, 12-year-old Marcus Harper, waited at the stop as he always did, scrolling through his phone while keeping an eye out for his sister. The bus came and went. Lily never got off. Marcus felt his stomach tighten as he watched the last child step down from the yellow bus. He ran alongside the vehicle, waving frantically at the driver, a gray-haired woman named Patricia Coleman, who had been driving the same route for 15 years. "Mrs. Coleman, wait!" Marcus shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Patricia opened the door, her weathered face creasing with concern. "What's wrong, Marcus?" "Lily didn't get off the bus. Is she still on there?" "Ugh." His hands were shaking. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. She stood up and walked down the aisle, checking every seat, looking under them, even opening the emergency exit door at the back. The bus was empty. She wasn't on the bus when I picked up from the school," Patricia said slowly, her voice trembling. "I do a head count every time, and I only had 11 kids today. Lily wasn't one of them." Marcus's phone was already at his ear, calling his mother. The call went to voicemail. He tried his father, David Harper, who answered on the second ring. "Dad, Lily's missing," Marcus blurted out, his voice high and desperate. "She never got on the bus." 17 minutes later, the Harper family stood in Principal Margaret Lawson's office at Oakwood Elementary. The school's security footage showed Lily walking out with her class at dismissal time, heading toward the bus loading zone. But then, inexplicably, she veered away from the line of children boarding bus 7 and walked toward the parking lot. "Stop right there," Detective Nathan Cross said, leaning closer to the monitor. He had arrived within minutes of the 911 call. A tall man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes that had seen too many cases like this. Zoom in on that vehicle. The footage showed a dark blue sedan parked near the edge of the lot, partially obscured by a maintenance truck. Lily approached it, and the passenger door opened. She seemed to hesitate, then climbed inside. The car pulled away slowly, disappearing from the camera's view. Jennifer Harper let out a strangled sob, her hands clutching her husband's arm. "Who is that? Who took my baby?" "We can't see the license plate from this angle," Detective Cross said grimly. "But we're going to find out. I promise you we're going to find her." David Harper's face had gone pale, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. How does someone just drive onto school property and take a child? Where were the teachers? Where was the supervision? Principal Lawson wrung her hands, tears streaming down her face. "We have staff monitoring dismissal, but with over 300 students leaving at once. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." By nightfall, Greenfield had transformed into a town gripped by fear and urgency. News vans lined the street outside the Harper residence, their bright lights cutting through the darkness. Volunteers gathered at the community center, organizing search parties that would comb through the nearby woods and fields. Police officers went door to door, interviewing neighbors, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious. At the Greenfield Police Department, Detective Cross assembled his team in the conference room. Maps of the surrounding area covered the walls, marked with colored pins indicating search zones. The Amber Alert had gone out within the first hour, broadcasting Lily's description across 3 states: blonde hair, blue eyes, 4 feet 2 inches tall, last seen wearing a pink jacket and jeans. We're treating this as a non-family abduction until we have evidence otherwise, Cross told his officers. Both parents have alibis, and there's no history of custody disputes. The first 48 hours are critical. I want every camera in a 5-mile radius pulled and reviewed. Talk to every delivery driver, postal worker, and regular commuter who uses these roads. Someone saw something. Outside the police station, a different kind of gathering was taking place. 7 motorcycles sat parked in a row, their chrome gleaming under the streetlights. The riders stood in a loose circle, leather jackets bearing the emblem of the Iron Riders MC, a motorcycle club that had called Greenfield home for over 20 years. Jack Turner, the club's president, was a man in his late 40s with a weathered face and steel-grey eyes that missed nothing. He had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before returning to Greenfield, trading his military uniform for leather and denim. Next to him stood Claire Anderson, the club's vice president and the only woman in the local chapter, a fierce rider with auburn hair and a scar running along her left forearm from a crash that should have killed her 3 years ago. "My niece goes to that school," Claire said, her voice tight with emotion. It could have been her. Rick Matthews, a mechanic with tattooed arms and a reputation for fixing anything with an engine, shook his head. "Cops are going to be stretched thin. Small department like Greenfield's, they don't have the resources for something like this." "So what are you suggesting?" asked Logan Barnes, a younger member who had joined the club 2 years earlier after losing his job at the lumber mill. "We go rogue and start our own investigation." Jack looked toward the police station, his expression unreadable. "I'm suggesting we do what we've always done. Look out for this town. We know these roads better than anyone. We know the people, the places folks go when they don't want to be found. If that little girl is out there, we're going to help find her." Brooke Carter, a nurse who rode on weekends and had joined the club for the sense of family she'd never had growing up, nodded slowly. "We'd need to coordinate with the police, though. Can't just go off half-cocked." "I know Cross," Jack said. "We've had our differences, but he's a good cop. I'll talk to him tomorrow morning. Tonight, we ride through town, keep our eyes open, look for anything out of place." Miles Fisher, the youngest member at 23, revved his engine. "Let's do it." As the Iron Riders roared out into the night, the sound of their engines echoed through Greenfield's quiet streets, a sound that many residents associated with trouble. But tonight, it was the sound of people refusing to stand by while a child's life hung in the balance. Inside her bedroom at 42 Willow Lane, Jennifer Harper sat on Lily's bed, clutching her daughter's favorite stuffed rabbit. The room still smelled like strawberry shampoo and crayons. Photos of Lily covered the walls. Lily at her piano recital, Lily blowing out birthday candles, Lily grinning with her 2 front teeth missing. David stood in the doorway, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke with his parents in Ohio, updating them on the situation. Marcus sat in his own room across the hall, staring at the ceiling, guilt crushing down on his chest because he couldn't shake the feeling that he should have known something was wrong earlier. Somewhere out in the darkness, beyond the searchlights and police cruisers and worried volunteers, Lily Harper sat in a cold basement with concrete walls and a single small window too high to reach. Her pink jacket was dirty now, and tear tracks streaked her face, but her eyes were still alert, still fighting. She remembered what her father had taught her about staying calm in emergencies. She remembered her mother's voice telling her that she was brave, that she was strong, and she held on to those memories like lifelines as she listened to footsteps creaking on the floor above her head, wondering when someone would realize she was missing, wondering if anyone would find her in time. The first chapter of this nightmare had only just begun. Dawn broke over Greenfield with a grey, overcast sky that matched the mood of everyone in town. By 6 a.m., Detective Nathan Cross had been awake for 24 hours straight, surviving on black coffee and determination. The conference room at the police station had become a command center, with officers working in shifts to follow up on every tip that came through the hotline. So far, they had nothing concrete. The dark blue sedan from the school footage remained unidentified. The make and model were too common, and without a license plate, they were searching for a needle in a haystack. Door-to-door interviews had yielded no eyewitnesses. The search parties had covered 15 square miles of woods and farmland with no sign of Lily. Officer Rebecca Montoya, a rookie who had joined the force just 8 months earlier, looked up from her computer screen with red-rimmed eyes. "Detective, we've got 37 dark blue sedans registered in the county. I'm running background checks on all the owners, but it's going to take time." "We don't have time," Cross muttered, rubbing his temples. "That little girl's been missing for almost 18 hours. A knock on the door interrupted them. Sergeant Paul Hendricks, a barrel-chested man who had worked with Cross for 15 years, stuck his head in. "Boss, we've got someone here to see you. Says it's about the Harper case." "Send them in," Cross said wearily. Jack Turner walked into the conference room, and Cross's expression immediately hardened. The two men had history. 3 years ago, the Iron Riders had been involved in a bar fight that resulted in thousands of dollars in property damage and a week's worth of paperwork for Cross's department. The charges had eventually been dropped when security footage proved that the club members had been defending themselves against a group of out-of-towners. But the incident had left a bitter taste. "Turner," Cross said curtly, "I'm busy." "I know you are," Jack replied, his tone respectful but firm. "That's why I'm here. The Iron Riders want to help with the search." Cross leaned back in his chair, studying the biker. "No offense, but we've got trained search and rescue teams, cadaver dogs, and volunteers coordinating through proper channels. I don't need a motorcycle club going vigilante." "We're not talking about going vigilante," Jack said, pulling out a folded map from his jacket pocket and spreading it on the table. "Look, you've got good people working this case, but they don't know the area like we do. These back roads, these abandoned properties out past the county line, we ride through there every week. We know which buildings are empty, which ones get used by squatters or dealers. We know the shortcuts and the dead ends." Officer Montoya glanced at Cross, then at the map. "He's got a point, sir. We've been focusing our search on the immediate area around town, but if someone wanted to hide a child, they'd go somewhere remote." Cross's jaw tightened. He hated admitting when someone else had a valid argument, especially when that someone wore a leather jacket with a club patch. But he also knew that every hour that passed reduced the chances of finding Lily alive. "Fine," Cross said finally. "But you coordinate with Sergeant Hendricks. You check in every 2 hours. You find anything, and I mean anything. You call it in immediately. You don't approach. You don't investigate on your own. Are we clear?" Jack nodded. "Crystal." By 8 a.m., the Iron Riders had mobilized. Claire Anderson had called in sick to her job at the county hospital, and Rick Matthews had closed his garage for the day. Logan Barnes, Brooke Carter, and Miles Fisher joined them, along with 2 other club members. Vincent "Vinny" Caldwell, a former truck driver with a photographic memory for routes and locations, and Natalie Ross, a school teacher who had recently transferred to Greenfield and joined the club to meet people. They gathered at Rick's garage, where he had printed out satellite images of the surrounding area. "All right, listen up," Jack said, circling several locations on the map. "We're splitting into 3 teams. Claire, Rick, and Vinny. You take the northwest quadrant. That's where those old mining roads are, Logan and Brook. You've got the east side, past the Morrison farm. Miles, Natalie, and I will cover the south down toward the state line." "What exactly are we looking for?" Natalie asked, her voice betraying her nervousness. This was her first real club operation beyond charity rides and social events. "Anything unusual," Claire said, zipping up her leather jacket. Fresh tire tracks on abandoned properties. Lights in buildings that should be dark. Curtains drawn in the middle of the day. Someone who acts hinky when they see us riding by. Rick added, also keep an eye out for that blue sedan. I know it's a long shot, but whoever took Lily had to park it somewhere. The teams dispersed, their engines roaring to life. As they rode out in different directions, several townspeople stopped to watch, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. The Iron Riders had always been outsiders in Greenfield, tolerated but not fully trusted, seen as rough around the edges despite their community involvement. Margaret Chen, who owned the diner on Main Street, stood in her doorway with her arms crossed. You think they'll actually help? She asked her husband, Henry, who was refilling the coffee pots inside. I hope so, Henry replied. That little girl needs all the help she can get. Claire's team headed northwest, their bikes navigating the narrow, pothole-riddled roads that wound through the hills. The autumn foliage was beautiful, but none of them noticed. Their focus was entirely on the task at hand. There, Vinny said, pointing to a turnoff ahead. That road leads to the old Blackwood mine. Been shut down for 20 years, but there's still some structures standing. They turned onto an overgrown path, their bikes struggling over roots and rocks. The mine entrance came into view, a gaping hole in the hillside, boarded up with rotting wood. Next to it stood a dilapidated office building, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. Rick dismounted and walked around the perimeter. No fresh tire tracks. No signs of recent activity. Claire peered through one of the broken windows. Inside, the building was empty except for rusted filing cabinets and moldy paperwork scattered across the floor. Nothing here. Let's keep moving. They spent the next 3 hours checking similar locations. Abandoned farmhouses, defunct gas stations, a collapsed barn that had once belonged to the Whitaker family. Each time, they found nothing. Meanwhile, Logan and Brooks' team had their own frustrations. The east side of Greenfield was mostly farmland, with properties spread far apart. They stopped at each one, talking to the residents, asking if they'd seen anything unusual. At the Morrison farm, elderly Thomas Morrison leaned on his porch railing, his German shepherd barking at the motorcycles. I heard about the missing girl, he said, his voice gravelly. Terrible thing. But I haven't seen any strange cars around here. Pretty quiet out this way. What about that property next to yours? Brooke asked, pointing to a house about half a mile down the road. The one with all the trees around it? Thomas frowned. That's the old Fletcher place. Been empty for years. The bank foreclosed on it back in 2018. Why? Just being thorough, Logan said. Mind if we take a look? Be my guest, Thomas replied. But I'm telling you, nobody's been there. Logan and Brooke rode down to the Fletcher property, their bikes kicking up dust from the unpaved driveway. The house was a 2-story colonial with peeling paint and sagging gutters. The yard was overgrown with weeds that reached up to their waists. Looks pretty deserted, Brooke said, dismounting. Logan walked around to the back of the house. The back door hung open, its lock broken. Inside, the house was gutted, copper pipes torn from the walls, light fixtures ripped out, anything of value long since stolen. Clear, Logan called out. Just another dead end. Jack's team covered the south side, which bordered the state forest. This area was less populated, with long stretches of road cutting through dense woods. They checked hunting cabins and campsites, places where someone could hide without drawing attention. At a general store near the state line, they stopped to refuel and ask questions. The owner, a wiry man named Dale Patterson, shook his head when Jack showed him a photo of Lily. Haven't seen her, Dale said, but I'll tell you something weird. Yesterday afternoon, around 4 o'clock, a guy came in here and bought a bunch of supplies. Bread, peanut butter, bottled water, batteries. Paid cash, didn't say much, but he was nervous, kept looking out the window like he was worried someone was following him. Jack's pulse quickened. What did he look like? Mid-30s, brown hair, average build, Dale said. Driving a dark blue car, I think. Might have been a Honda or a Toyota. I'm not great with car models. Did you see which direction he went? Miles asked urgently. Dale pointed south. That way. Only thing down that road is the old lumber camp and a few hunting cabins. Jack pulled out his phone and called Sergeant Hendricks. We've got a potential lead. Dark blue sedan, male driver, bought supplies yesterday afternoon at the general store on Route 17. He was heading south toward the old lumber camp. Stay put, Hendricks ordered. We're sending units your way now. 20 minutes later, 3 police cruisers arrived, lights flashing. Detective Cross stepped out, his face drawn with exhaustion and renewed hope. Show me exactly where this guy was headed, Cross said to Dale. Dale repeated his story, and Cross immediately radioed for backup. We're going to sweep that area. Turner, you and your people stay here. This is police business now. Jack wanted to argue, but he knew Cross was right. If they found Lily, the last thing they needed was civilians complicating a potential hostage situation. As the police vehicles sped down the road, Jack, Miles and Natalie could only wait, the tension thick in the air. Do you think she's there? Natalie asked quietly. I hope so, Jack replied, his hands clenched into fists. I really hope so. Back in Greenfield, Jennifer and David Harper sat in their living room, surrounded by family members who had driven in from neighboring states. The television was on, showing the local news coverage of the search, but no one was really watching. Jennifer's sister, Amanda Sullivan, brought her a cup of tea that went untouched. The police are doing everything they can, Amanda said softly. It's not enough, Jennifer whispered, her voice hollow. Every minute that passes, every minute. David pulled her close, his own tears finally spilling over. She's strong. She's our daughter, and she's strong. She's going to be okay. Marcus sat on the stairs, listening to the adults talk in hushed, worried tones. He felt useless, trapped in this house while everyone else was out searching. His phone buzzed with messages from friends at school, all asking if there was any news, all offering prayers and support that felt hollow against the crushing weight of not knowing. At the general store, Jack received a call from Claire. Her team had finished searching their quadrant with no results. Logan and Brooke reported the same. Cross thinks he might have something, Jack told them. Stay ready. If he needs us, we move. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, Jack's phone rang. It was Detective Cross, and his voice was heavy with disappointment. We found the lumber camp. There was someone there, a man matching the description from the store. But it wasn't our guy. He's just a homeless veteran living off the grid, nothing to do with the abduction. The car wasn't even blue, it was green. Dale must have remembered wrong. Jack closed his eyes, the brief spark of hope extinguished. So we're back to square one. Not necessarily, Cross said. Your lead got us moving in the right direction. We're expanding the search to include all these remote areas. We're bringing in the state police, the FBI. We're not giving up. Neither are we, Jack said firmly. As darkness fell on the second day of Lily Harper's disappearance, the Iron Riders regrouped at Rick's garage. They were exhausted, frustrated, and running out of ideas. There has to be something we're missing, Claire said, pacing back and forth. Someplace we haven't thought of. Rick pulled up a satellite map on his laptop. We've covered the obvious spots: abandoned buildings, remote cabins, old industrial sites. Where else would someone take a kidnapped child? Somewhere they have a connection to, Brooke said slowly. Somewhere they feel safe, comfortable. Somewhere they can control. Jack stared at the map, his mind racing. Tomorrow we change tactics. We stop looking for places and start looking at people. Who in this town has a history that doesn't add up? Who recently moved here? Who has access to properties that aren't their own? That's going to require digging, Vinny said. Public records, background checks. Then we dig, Jack said. Lily's out there somewhere, scared and alone. We're going to find her. But none of them knew that the answer was closer than they thought, and that the person responsible was someone they passed on the street every single day. The The third day dawned cold and damp, with a light rain that turned Greenfield's dirt roads into muddy streams. At the police station, Detective Cross was coordinating with FBI agents who had arrived overnight. Special Agent Diana Foster, a woman in her 40s with short dark hair and sharp eyes, took over a corner of the conference room and began building a profile of the likely abductor. Statistically, in non-family abductions of children this age, the perpetrator is usually someone familiar with the victim's routine, Foster explained to Cross and his team. They've likely observed Lily for days or even weeks, learning her schedule, identifying when and where she would be most vulnerable. Officer Montoya pulled up a list on her computer. We've been checking registered sex offenders in the county. There are 11 within a 20-mile radius. We've interviewed 8 so far, all with solid alibis. What about the other 3? Cross asked. One is currently incarcerated in a state facility for parole violation, Montoya replied. The second one is Martin Green, age 64, lives alone on Pine Ridge Road. We've got officers heading to his place now. The third is Dennis Cartwright, but he moved out of state 6 months ago, confirmed with his parole officer in Nevada. Agent Foster studied the photos of each suspect. Green is worth looking at, but keep in mind, our perpetrator was confident enough to drive onto school property in broad daylight. That suggests someone who doesn't stand out, someone who blends in. A 64-year-old man in a car at an elementary school might draw attention. Unless people are used to seeing him there, Sergeant Hendricks said. What if he volunteers at the school or has a legitimate reason to be on campus? Cross immediately grabbed his phone and called Principal Margaret Lawson. Margaret, I need a list of every volunteer, contractor, vendor and parent who has regular access to school property, and I need it within the hour. At Rick's garage, the Iron Riders had set up their own investigation board. Jack had reached out to contacts throughout the county, people who owed him favors, old military buddies who now worked in various fields, even a former girlfriend who was a paralegal and could access public records. Claire pinned photos and notes to a corkboard they'd borrowed from the community center. Okay, so we're looking at recent arrivals to Greenfield. In the past year, we've had 12 new families move into town, plus about 30 individuals, mostly people taking jobs at the hospital or the manufacturing plant. That's too many to investigate thoroughly, Rick said, rubbing his grease-stained hands with a rag. So we narrow it down, Logan suggested. Single males, aged 25 to 50, no family in the area. That's usually the profile for this kind of crime, right? Brooke, who had done some research online using her nursing background to access medical journals about criminal psychology, nodded. Usually yes. But we shouldn't completely rule out women or couples. It's rare, but not impossible. Vinny had been quietly working on his laptop in the corner. I've been looking at property records. There are 17 properties in the county that have changed hands in the past 18 months. Most are normal sales, families moving in or out. But 3 of them are interesting. He turned his screen so everyone could see. This one here, 1847 Ridgemont Avenue, was purchased by a trust. The buyer's identity isn't public. This one, 903 Lakewood Drive, was bought at auction by a limited liability company registered in Delaware. And this one, 2156 Harper Road. Wait, Jack interrupted, his eyes narrowing. Harper Road? Same last name as the victim. Could be a coincidence, Vinny said. It's not an uncommon name. But yeah, I noticed it too. The property was purchased 8 months ago by someone named Eric Donovan. He paid cash, no mortgage. Works as a freelance IT consultant, which means he works from home and doesn't have regular contact with many people. Claire leaned in to look at the screen. What do we know about him? Not much, Vinny admitted. No criminal record, at least not under that name. His social media is minimal, barely uses it. No photos, no personal information. He's a ghost. Or he's hiding something, Jack said grimly. We need to check him out. Miles spoke up hesitantly. Shouldn't we tell the cops about this? We will, Jack assured him. But first, let's confirm there's something worth reporting. We ride past his place, see if anything looks suspicious. If we find something, we call Cross immediately. The team suited up and headed out into the rain. The address on Harper Road was about 15 minutes from town, down a winding road that cut through a thick stand of pine trees. As they approached, they killed their engines and coasted the last 100 yards, not wanting to announce their arrival. The house was a modest ranch-style home set back from the road with a gravel driveway. A dark blue sedan sat in the carport. Jack's blood ran cold. That's the car. Are you sure? Claire whispered. Same make, same model, same color, Jack confirmed. We need to call this in right now. But before he could pull out his phone, the front door of the house opened. A man stepped out onto the porch, mid-30s, brown hair, average build. He was carrying a trash bag. Eric Donovan froze when he saw the motorcycles. For a split second, his face registered panic. Then he dropped the trash bag and bolted back inside, slamming the door. He's running, Rick shouted. Jack was already on his phone, dialing 911. This is Jack Turner with the Iron Riders. We're at 2156 Harper Road, and we found the suspect in the Lily Harper abduction. Dark blue sedan in the driveway. Suspect just fled into the house. We need police here now. Do not approach the residence, the dispatcher ordered. Units are on their way. But Claire wasn't listening. She dismounted her bike and ran toward the house. Lily! Lily, are you in there? Claire, wait! Jack yelled, but she was already at the door, pounding on it. Inside the house, they could hear crashing sounds like furniture being knocked over. Then, from somewhere below, a child's scream pierced the air. She's in the basement, Claire shouted. Rick and Logan joined her, and together they kicked at the door. The frame splintered on the third kick, and the door burst open. The interior of the house was dimly lit and sparsely furnished. Jack entered first, his heart pounding. Donovan! We're not here to hurt you. We just want the girl. A door at the end of the hallway stood open, revealing stairs leading down into darkness. They could hear Lily's voice now, crying, calling for help. Jack descended the stairs, with Claire right behind him. The basement was unfinished, with concrete walls and a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the corner, Lily Harper sat huddled on a dirty mattress, her hands bound with zip ties. It's okay, sweetheart. We're here to help you, Claire said, rushing to the girl's side. She pulled out a pocket knife and cut through the zip ties. Lily threw her arms around Claire's neck, sobbing. I want my mom. I want to go home. You're going home, Claire promised, tears streaming down her own face. You're safe now. Upstairs, they heard sirens approaching. Within seconds, police officers swarmed the house. Detective Cross entered the basement, his weapon drawn, and his expression shifted from intense focus to overwhelming relief when he saw Lily alive. Clear the house, Cross ordered his officers. Find Donovan. But Eric Donovan was gone. The back door was open, and muddy footprints led into the woods behind the property. He had escaped. An hour later, Lily Harper was reunited with her parents at Greenfield General Hospital. The scene in the emergency room was one of pure joy and tears. Jennifer and David clutching their daughter as if they would never let her go. Marcus hugging his sister and apologizing over and over for not protecting her. Dr. Helen Ramos, the attending physician, checked Lily thoroughly. She's dehydrated and exhausted, and she has some bruising on her wrists from the restraints. But physically, she appears to be okay. We'll keep her overnight for observation, and I'm recommending she see a trauma counselor as soon as possible. In the hospital waiting room, the Iron Riders sat quietly, the adrenaline of the rescue slowly fading into exhaustion. Detective Cross approached them, his expression complicated. What you did was reckless and dangerous, Cross said. You contaminated a crime scene, you endangered yourselves, and you let the suspect escape." Jack met his gaze steadily. "We found her. She's alive. That's what matters." Cross's stern expression softened slightly. "You're right. You found her, and for that, the Harper family and this entire town owe you a debt of gratitude." "We don't want gratitude," Claire said. "We just want Donovan caught. We've got helicopters searching the woods, roadblocks on every highway leading out of the county, and the FBI has issued a federal warrant for his arrest," Cross said. "We'll find him." But as the hours passed and the search continued with no results, a troubling question lingered in everyone's mind. How had Eric Donovan known to run the moment he saw the motorcycles? And where had he gone? That night, after Lily had been cleared by the doctors and released to go home, Jennifer Harper insisted on meeting the people who had saved her daughter. The Iron Riders gathered at the Harper residence, feeling awkward and out of place in the suburban living room filled with family photos and comfortable furniture. Jennifer embraced each of them, her gratitude overwhelming. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up, for finding her. I don't have words to express what this means to us." Lily, cleaned up and wearing fresh pajamas, looked small and fragile as she sat between her parents on the couch. But when she saw Claire, her face brightened. "You're the lady who found me," Lily said quietly. Claire knelt down so she was at eye level with the girl. "That's right. And you were so brave. You stayed strong, and that helped us find you. The man who took me, he said he was a friend of my dad's," Lily said, her voice trembling. "He said my dad sent him to pick me up because there was an emergency. I didn't know it was a lie until he locked me in that basement." David Harper's face went pale. "Lily, sweetheart, I would never send someone to pick you up without telling you directly. Do you understand? If anyone ever says that again, you run and you scream and you find a teacher or a police officer." Lily nodded, tears welling up again. "I was so scared." Jennifer held her daughter close. "I know, baby. I know." Jack cleared his throat. "Mr. and Mrs. Harper, did you know Eric Donovan? Had you ever met him before?" David shook his head. "I've never heard that name in my life. The police asked us the same thing. We have no connection to him at all." "Then why did he target Lily specifically?" Rick wondered aloud. It was a question that haunted all of them as they left the Harper home that night. Eric Donovan remained at large, and until he was caught, the full truth of why he had abducted Lily Harper would remain a mystery. But the biggest shock was yet to come, a revelation that would turn everything they thought they knew upside down. 4 days after Lily's rescue, Greenfield was still reeling. The national news had picked up the story, praising the Iron Riders for their role in finding the missing girl and putting a spotlight on the small Pennsylvania town. Jack Turner and his club members found themselves reluctant celebrities, with reporters asking for interviews and strangers approaching them on the street to shake their hands. But Eric Donovan was still missing. Despite an extensive manhunt involving local police, state troopers, and federal agents, the abductor had seemingly vanished into thin air. Detective Cross worked around the clock, following every lead, but each one turned into a dead end. On the morning of the 4th day, Cross called Jack to the police station. "We need to talk," he said, his voice grave. Jack arrived to find Cross in the conference room with Agent Foster and a man he didn't recognize, a thin, nervous-looking individual in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and thinning hair. "This is Walter Simmons," Cross said. "He's a private investigator from Philadelphia. He's been working on a case that, well, you need to hear this." Walter shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Mr. Turner, 6 months ago, I was hired by a woman named Patricia Donovan to investigate her son, Eric. She was worried about his behavior. He'd become increasingly isolated, paranoid, obsessive. She wanted to know if he was involved in anything illegal." Jack's jaw tightened. "And I discovered that Eric had been researching the Harper family extensively. Walter continued. He had files on them, photos, detailed notes about their routines. But what I found most disturbing was his fixation on David Harper specifically. David Harper, who had been called to the station for this meeting, looked shocked. Why would he be fixated on me? I've never even met the man. Walter pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were old photographs, newspaper clippings, and legal documents. 23 years ago, you were involved in a car accident. Do you remember it? David's face went pale. Yes, I was 17, just got my driver's license. I was driving too fast on a rainy night, lost control, and hit another car. The driver was injured but survived. I was charged with reckless driving, did community service, and paid restitution. It was the biggest mistake of my life, and I've never forgotten it. The driver of that car was Eric Donovan's father, Michael Donovan, Walter said quietly. He suffered a severe spinal injury in that crash. He was paralyzed from the waist down and spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair. He died 2 years ago from complications related to his condition. Jennifer Harper, who had accompanied her husband, gasped. "Oh my God!" "Eric blamed your family for his father's death," Agent Foster explained. "According to his mother, he became consumed with the idea that you had never really paid for what you did, that you got off too easy, went on to have a happy life, while his father suffered and eventually died." David buried his face in his hands. "I didn't know. I mean, I knew the man was injured, but I didn't know it was that serious. The settlement went through lawyers. I never had contact with the family directly. If I had known, what would you have done?" Jack asked gently. "I don't know," David said, his voice breaking. "Apologized. Tried to help. Something more than what I did." Cross leaned forward. "Eric Donovan's plan was revenge. He couldn't bring himself to hurt you directly, Mr. Harper, so he targeted what you loved most, your daughter. He wanted you to feel the kind of pain and loss that he believed you had inflicted on his family." Jennifer's hands were shaking. "But Lily is just a child. She had nothing to do with any of this." "That's the twisted logic of someone consumed by grief and anger," Agent Foster said. "In Eric's mind, making you suffer was justice for his father." The room fell silent, everyone processing this devastating revelation. Finally, Jack spoke. "So where is he now? Where would he go?" "That's why I asked Mr. Simmons to come here," Cross said. In his investigation, he learned about locations that were significant to Eric and his father, places they used to visit together before the accident. Walter opened his laptop and pulled up a map. Michael Donovan was an avid outdoorsman. He and Eric used to go camping and fishing every summer at various spots throughout Pennsylvania and New York. After the accident, they couldn't continue those trips, which Eric resented deeply. There's one location in particular that came up repeatedly in Eric's journals, a cabin near Lake Wallenpaupack, about 90 miles from here. "The cabin is registered under a family trust," Walter continued. "Eric inherited it after his father's death. It's remote, off the grid, difficult to access. If he's trying to hide, that would be the place." Cross was already on his feet. "Foster, get a team together. We're going up there now." "I'm coming with you," Jack said. "Absolutely not," Cross replied. "This is official police business." "Eric knows who I am now," Jack argued. "He saw me and my club at his house. If he's feeling cornered and desperate, having a familiar face there, someone who isn't law enforcement, might make him more likely to surrender peacefully." Agent Foster considered this. "He has a point, Detective. If we storm in with a tactical team, Donovan might panic. Having a civilian intermediary could prevent this from turning into a hostage situation or worse." Cross looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew they were right. "Fine, but you stay behind our perimeter and you don't approach unless I give you explicit permission. Understood?" Jack nodded. "Understood." 2 hours later, a convoy of police vehicles and FBI units made their way through the winding mountain roads toward Lake Wallenpaupack. The Iron Riders followed on their motorcycles, with Claire, Rick, Logan and Brooke insisting on joining Jack despite the danger. The cabin was located on a narrow dirt road that was barely visible from the main highway. As they approached, Cross ordered all vehicles to stop a quarter-mile away. "We go in on foot from here," he said. "Silent approach. Donovan may have weapons, so everyone stays alert." The tactical team moved first, spreading out to surround the cabin. Through binoculars, they could see a single light burning in one of the windows. Eric's blue sedan was parked outside. "He's here," Agent Foster confirmed. Cross picked up a megaphone. "Eric Donovan, this is Detective Nathan Cross with the Greenfield Police Department. We have you surrounded. Come out with your hands up." There was no response. The light in the cabin went dark. "He's not coming out willingly," Foster said. "We need to go in." "Wait," Jack said, stepping forward. "Let me try." Against his better judgment, Cross handed over the megaphone. Jack's voice echoed through the trees. "Eric, my name is Jack Turner. I'm one of the people who found Lily. I know you're scared and angry. I know you feel like the world has treated you unfairly. But this isn't the way to fix it. Lily is safe now, back with her family. You can't change what happened to your father, but you can choose how this ends." Still no response. Jack continued. "I'm a veteran. I've seen what happens when people make decisions out of pain and rage. I've lost friends who couldn't find their way back from that darkness. But I've also seen people find redemption, even when they thought it was impossible. You can still make this right, Eric. You can still choose to walk out of there and face what you've done with dignity." Minutes passed, feeling like hours. Then, slowly, the cabin door opened. Eric Donovan stood in the doorway, his hands raised. He looked nothing like the dangerous criminal everyone had been hunting. He looked broken, defeated, a man who had lost everything. "I didn't want to hurt her," Eric called out, his voice cracking. "I just wanted him to understand. I wanted David Harper to know what it feels like to lose someone you love." "I know," Jack said, "and now he does. But Lily is alive, Eric. You didn't cross that line. You can still come back from this." Tears streamed down Eric's face. "My dad was everything to me. After the accident, he was never the same. He was in pain every day for 23 years. And the guy who did it got a slap on the wrist and moved on with his life, like nothing happened." "David Harper has lived with the guilt of that accident every day," Jack said. "It's shaped who he is, the kind of father he's become. What happened to your father was a tragedy, but adding more tragedy won't fix it." Eric's hands were shaking. For a moment, it looked like he might bolt back inside the cabin. But then his shoulders sagged and he walked forward, down the cabin steps, toward the waiting police officers. "I'm sorry," Eric whispered as the officers handcuffed him. "I'm so sorry." The drive back to Greenfield was somber. The Iron Riders rode in formation behind the police convoy, processing everything they had learned. Eric Donovan wasn't a monster. He was a broken man who had made a terrible choice, born from years of unprocessed grief and anger. At the police station, Eric was processed and placed in a holding cell. He would be charged with kidnapping, unlawful restraint, and a host of other crimes. His life as he knew it was over. David and Jennifer Harper were informed of the arrest. The revelation about David's connection to Eric's father had shaken them both profoundly. "I need to see him," David said to Detective Cross. "I need to talk to Eric." "That's not a good idea," Cross replied. "He's being represented by a public defender, and any conversation could complicate the case." "I don't care about complicating the case," David said firmly. "A man spent 23 years hating me, and his son almost destroyed my family because of it. I need to at least try to, I don't know, make some kind of peace with this." After much discussion, and with the approval of Eric's attorney, a meeting was arranged. David sat in an interview room, waiting, his hands clasped tightly together. When Eric was brought in, the two men stared at each other across the table. "I was 17, David began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was stupid and reckless, and I made a decision that changed your father's life. I've thought about that night countless times over the years. I've wondered what I could have done differently, how I could have made things right." Eric looked down at his cuffed hands. "You took everything from him, from us." "I know," David said, "and I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than you could ever know. I can't give you back your father, and I can't undo the pain he suffered. But I want you to know that I think about him. I've always thought about him." "Did you ever try to reach out?" Eric asked, his voice bitter. "After the settlement, after the legal stuff was done, did you ever once think to check on how he was doing?" David's silence was answer enough. "That's what killed me," Eric said, tears forming in his eyes. "Not just what you did, but how easily you seemed to forget about it, how you got to move on and be happy while my dad was trapped in a wheelchair, in pain, for the rest of his life." "I didn't forget," David said. "I was ashamed. I was a coward who didn't want to face what I'd done. And that's on me. I should have been brave enough to reach out, to try to help, to at least acknowledge the impact of my actions beyond a legal settlement." The two men sat in heavy silence. Finally, Eric spoke. "Your daughter, Lily. When I had her in that basement, she talked about you, about how you taught her to stay calm in emergencies, how you told her she was brave. She loves you so much." "I love her too," David said, his voice breaking, "more than anything in this world." "I couldn't do it," Eric admitted. "I thought I could. I thought hurting her would make you feel what I felt. But every time I went down to that basement and saw how scared she was, I felt sick. I'm not a monster. I never wanted to be a monster." "Then why did you take her?" David asked. "Because I didn't know what else to do with all this anger," Eric replied. "It's been eating me alive for years, and when my dad died, it got worse. I thought if I could make you suffer even just for a few days, it would give me some kind of closure. But it didn't. It just made everything worse." David reached across the table and, after a moment's hesitation, placed his hand on Eric's cuffed ones. "I'm sorry about your father. I'm sorry for the pain you've endured. And I'm sorry that my cowardice and shame prevented me from trying to make amends years ago. I can't ask for your forgiveness, and I don't expect it. But I want you to know that I will carry the weight of this for the rest of my life." Eric nodded, unable to speak. The meeting ended shortly after, with both men emotionally drained. As David left the police station, he was met by Jennifer and Lily, who had been waiting in the lobby. "Are you okay?" Jennifer asked, touching his face. "No," David said honestly, "but maybe someday I will be." Lily hugged her father tightly. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart," he replied, holding her close. "So much." 3 months had passed since that October day when Lily Harper was taken. Winter had arrived in Greenfield, covering the small town in a blanket of snow that muffled sound and softened edges. Christmas lights hung from storefronts on Main Street, and the community center hosted a holiday market where local vendors sold handmade crafts and baked goods. Lily had returned to school, though not without challenges. 3 months had passed since that October day when Lily Harper was taken. Winter had arrived in Greenfield, covering the small town in a blanket of snow that muffled sound and softened edges. Christmas lights hung from storefronts on Main Street, and the community center hosted a holiday market where local vendors sold handmade crafts and baked goods. Lily had returned to school, though not without challenges. She attended weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Rachel Winters, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery. Some days were harder than others. Unexpected sounds could trigger panic attacks, and she refused to ride the school bus, insisting that Jennifer or David drive her to and from Oakwood Elementary. But there were good days too, days when Lily laughed with her friends at recess, when she played piano without the shadow of fear hanging over her, when she felt like herself again. The healing process was slow and non-linear, but it was happening. Marcus had struggled with his own guilt, blaming himself for not somehow preventing his sister's abduction. His parents had enrolled him in counseling as well, and slowly he was learning to forgive himself for something that had never been his fault. David Harper had changed in profound ways. The revelation about his connection to Eric Donovan's father had forced him to confront the consequences of his teenage recklessness in ways he had avoided for over 2 decades. He began volunteering with a victim advocacy group, speaking to young people about accountability and the ripple effects of their choices. "I can't change what I did 23 years ago," David told a group of high school students during a presentation at Greenfield High. "But I can choose to spend the rest of my life trying to make a positive difference. I can choose to be honest about my mistakes and help others avoid making the same ones." Jennifer had initially struggled with anger toward her husband, feeling betrayed that his past had brought such horror into their lives. But through couples counseling and many difficult conversations, they had found their way back to each other. Their marriage, tested by unimaginable stress, had emerged stronger. Eric Donovan awaited trial in the county jail. His attorney was negotiating a plea deal. Eric would plead guilty to kidnapping and related charges in exchange for a sentence of 15 to 20 years with the possibility of parole. Patricia Donovan, Eric's mother, had visited the Harpers to apologize for her son's actions, a meeting that had been painful but necessary for everyone involved. "I should have gotten him help sooner," Patricia had said, tears streaming down her weathered face. "After Michael died, I could see Eric spiraling, but I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I never imagined he would do something like this." Jennifer had embraced the older woman, both of them united in their grief and guilt. "We've all made mistakes. We've all looked back and wished we'd done things differently." At Rick's garage, the Iron Riders gathered on a Saturday afternoon in mid-December. The space had been transformed with holiday decorations. Claire had insisted on putting up lights and a small artificial tree, much to the amusement of the other members. "We look like a motorcycle club run by Martha Stewart," Rick joked, though he was smiling. "Shut up and drink your cocoa," Claire replied, handing him a mug. The atmosphere was lighter than it had been in months. The intensity of the search for Lily and the subsequent investigation had bonded the club members in ways that went beyond their usual camaraderie. They had faced something dark together and emerged changed by it. Jack sat in his usual spot, working on a carburetor while half listening to the chatter around him. His phone buzzed, a text from Detective Cross. "Harper family wants to do something for the club. Dinner at their place next week. You all in?" Jack looked around at his friends. Claire laughing at something Brooke said, Rick and Logan arguing about the best way to winterize a bike, Miles and Vinny planning a ride for New Year's Day, Natalie showing everyone photos of her nephew. These people, this makeshift family of misfits and outsiders, had risen to the occasion when a child's life hung in the balance. "Yeah," Jack typed back. "We're in." The dinner at the Harper residence the following Tuesday was both awkward and heartwarming. Jennifer had cooked enough food to feed an army: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh bread, and 3 different desserts. The dining room table had been extended with extra leaves to accommodate everyone. Lily, dressed in a red sweater with a snowflake pattern, clung to Claire's side for most of the evening. The bond between them had remained strong, with Claire visiting the Harper home several times since the rescue. "I made you something," Lily said shyly, pulling out a drawing from behind her back. It showed a group of people on motorcycles with a little girl standing among them. At the top, in careful block letters, it read, "My Heroes." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "This is beautiful, sweetheart. Can I keep it?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. I made ones for everyone. She distributed the drawings, each one personalized with details Lily had remembered or been told about. Jax showed him talking into a megaphone. Rix depicted him with tools scattered around. Logan and Brooks showed them riding side by side. Each drawing was a child's interpretation of the people who had saved her life. These are amazing, Lily, Jax said, his gruff voice gentle. Thank you. Over dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than expected. Stories were shared. The Iron Riders talked about how they had met, the rides they had taken, the charity events they participated in. The Harpers shared family stories, and slowly the two groups began to see each other not as different worlds colliding, but as people who had been brought together by circumstance and found unexpected common ground. I have to admit, David said during dessert, before all this happened, I had preconceptions about motorcycle clubs. I think a lot of people in town did. We know, Jack said without rancor. We're used to it. Well, you shouldn't have to be, Jennifer said firmly. You saved our daughter when you could have just stood by and let the police handle it. You put yourselves at risk. You spent your own time and money, and you didn't ask for anything in return. That's not the behavior of dangerous outlaws. That's the behavior of heroes. Rick shifted uncomfortably. We're not heroes. We just did what anyone would do. That's where you're wrong, David said. Most people wouldn't have done what you did. Most people would have made a few phone calls, maybe joined a search party for an afternoon, and then gone back to their lives. You didn't stop. You didn't give up. And because of that, my daughter is sitting here with us tonight. The weight of those words hung in the air. Marcus, who had been quiet for most of the meal, spoke up. I want to learn to ride a motorcycle when I'm old enough. His parents looked alarmed, but Jack smiled. It's a big responsibility. Dangerous if you're not careful. But there's nothing quite like the freedom of the open road. Will you teach me? Marcus asked. If your parents are okay with it, when you're old enough and you've proven you're responsible, I'd be honored, Jack replied. After dinner, the group moved to the living room. Lily asked Claire to read her a bedtime story, and they headed upstairs together. The others settled into comfortable conversation, the barriers that had once separated them crumbling away. There's something I want to say, David announced, standing up. The past few months have taught me a lot about judgment and assumptions. I've learned that people are rarely who we think they are at first glance. I've also learned that sometimes the people who seem the least likely to help are the ones who show up when it matters most. He looked at each of the Iron Riders in turn. You didn't have to get involved. This wasn't your fight, wasn't your problem. But you made it your mission anyway. And I want you to know that my family will be forever grateful. If there's ever anything at all that we can do for you, you just have to ask. There is one thing, Jack said thoughtfully. The community center needs a new roof. The building fund has been struggling to raise enough money. If you really want to help, maybe we could organize a fundraiser together. The Iron Riders and the Harper family, working as a team to do something good for Greenfield. Jennifer smiled. I think that's a wonderful idea. The fundraiser took place 2 weeks later on a surprisingly mild Saturday in early January. The Iron Riders had organized a motorcycle show in the community center parking lot, with locals bringing their bikes for display. The Harpers coordinated a bake sale, raffle, and silent auction, with donations pouring in from businesses throughout the town. Margaret Chen from the diner donated food for a barbecue. Thomas Morrison from the farm contributed fresh produce. Dale Patterson from the general store near the state line drove down with cases of water and soda. Even Principal Margaret Lawson from Oakwood Elementary showed up with a contingent of teachers, bringing homemade goods to sell. By the end of the day, they had raised over $15,000, more than enough to repair the community center roof with money left over for other improvements. Detective Cross stopped by in the afternoon, out of uniform for once. He found Jack standing next to his motorcycle, talking with a group of kids who were fascinated by the bike. "Never thought I'd see the day," Cross said, approaching. "What's that?" Jack asked. "You as a pillar of the community," Cross replied with a slight smile. "But I have to admit, you've earned it." Jack laughed. "Don't worry, Cross. We're still the same troublemakers we've always been. We just happen to be troublemakers who were in the right place at the right time." "That's not true, and you know it," Cross said. "What you did took courage and dedication. I misjudged you, Turner. I'm man enough to admit that." The two men shook hands, a gesture of respect and newfound understanding. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot, Lily Harper stood on a small makeshift stage that had been set up for speeches. Her parents stood on either side of her, lending support as she addressed the crowd that had gathered. "I want to thank everyone who helped look for me," Lily said, her small voice amplified by a microphone. "I was really scared when I was in that basement. But I remembered that my mom and dad loved me, and I knew people would be looking for me. And they were, lots and lots of people." She looked directly at the Iron Riders, who stood together near their motorcycles. Especially the motorcycle people. They didn't even know me, but they looked everywhere until they found me. "My therapist says that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. But I think the bravest thing you can do is help someone when you don't have to. When nobody expects you to, when it's hard and scary and you do it anyway." The crowd applauded, and more than a few people wiped away tears. Claire stepped forward and knelt down so she was at Lily's eye level. "You're pretty brave yourself, kid." Lily hugged her fiercely. "Thank you for finding me." "Always," Claire whispered. "Always." That evening, after the fundraiser had ended and the crowds had dispersed, the Iron Riders rode through Greenfield one last time before heading home. The streets were quiet, the town peaceful under a blanket of stars. They stopped at an overlook on the edge of town, where you could see the lights of Greenfield spread out in the valley below. Jack killed his engine, and one by one, the others did the same. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Brooke said, breaking the silence. "How close we came to not getting involved. If Jack hadn't talked to Cross that first morning, if we'd decided it wasn't our place, Lily might not be here." "But we did get involved," Rick said. "That's what matters." "Still," Logan added, "it makes you think. How many times do we have the opportunity to make a difference and we just don't? Because it's easier not to, or because we assume someone else will handle it." "That's the thing about being part of a community," Jack said. "Real community, not just living in the same place, but actually being connected to the people around you. You can't turn away when someone needs help. You can't just assume it's not your problem." Natalie, who was still relatively new to the club, spoke up. "I joined the Iron Riders because I was lonely. I had just moved to Greenfield, didn't know anyone. And I saw you guys riding through town one day. I thought it looked like fun, like a built-in group of friends. I never expected it to be this meaningful." Claire smiled. "That's what makes us more than just a club. We're a family. And families show up for each other and for their neighbors when they need help." Vinny, ever practical, cleared his throat. "So what's next for us? We going back to just regular rides and charity events?" "For now," Jack said. "But I think we've proven something, both to ourselves and to this town. We're not outsiders anymore. We're part of the fabric of Greenfield, for better or worse." Miles grinned. "I kind of like being local heroes." "Don't let it go to your head," Rick said, punching him lightly in the arm. "We did one good thing. The real work is showing up every day, being decent people, continuing to be there when we're needed." They sat in companionable silence for a few more minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Below them, Greenfield twinkled peacefully, a small town that had been shaken by darkness, but had found light in unexpected places. Finally, Jack started his engine. "Let's head home. It's been a long day." The motorcycles roared to life, their combined sound echoing through the night. As they rode back into town, they passed the Harper house, where warm light glowed in the windows. Inside, Lily was safe, surrounded by family, healing one day at a time. And somewhere in that house, hanging on the refrigerator next to Lily's latest school artwork and Marcus's basketball schedule, was the drawing she had made, My Heroes. A reminder that courage comes in many forms, that redemption is possible, and that sometimes the people we least expect turn out to be exactly who we need. 6 months later, on a warm spring day, Eric Donovan stood before a judge and accepted a plea deal. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 15. The courtroom was packed. Victims' advocates, reporters, curious townspeople, and in the front row, the Harper family. During his allocution, Eric addressed the court with tears streaming down his face. "I can't undo what I did. I can't give back the time that Lily lost, the fear she experienced, the trauma I inflicted on her and her family. All I can do is accept responsibility for my actions and spend the rest of my life trying to understand why I let grief and anger turn me into someone capable of such cruelty." He turned to face the Harpers directly. "I'm sorry. Those words are inadequate, but they're all I have. I'm sorry for what I did to your daughter. I'm sorry for the pain I caused your family. And I'm sorry that I allowed my father's suffering to become an excuse for inflicting suffering on others." David Harper nodded once, an acknowledgement if not quite forgiveness. Jennifer held Lily close, shielding her daughter from having to look at the man who had hurt her. As Eric was led away in handcuffs, Patricia Donovan approached the Harpers. The two mothers embraced, united by the complicated grief of loving someone who had caused or experienced profound harm. "He's going to get counseling in prison," Patricia said. "Real help, the kind I couldn't give him. Maybe he can become the man his father would have wanted him to be." "I hope so," Jennifer replied. "I truly do." Outside the courthouse, the Iron Riders waited. They had attended the sentencing as a show of support for the Harpers, their motorcycles lined up along the street like a protective barrier. Jack approached David as the family emerged from the building. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," David said. "It's over now. We can finally move forward." Lily tugged on Claire's jacket. "Can we get ice cream?" Claire laughed. "I think that's exactly what we need." The group walked together to the diner on Main Street, an unlikely assembly of leather-clad bikers and a suburban family. Margaret Chen greeted them with warm smiles and didn't hesitate when they needed to push 3 tables together to accommodate everyone. As they sat eating ice cream sundaes on a Tuesday afternoon, the conversation turned to lighter topics. Upcoming summer plans, Marcus's baseball season, a charity ride the Iron Riders were organizing for the Children's Hospital. Lily, who had been quietly working on her sundae, suddenly looked up. "I'm not scared anymore." The table fell silent. "Not all the time, anyway," she amended. "Sometimes I still get scared, but then I remember that there are good people who help, like all of you, and that makes me feel better." Jennifer blinked back tears. "There are good people everywhere, sweetheart. You just have to know where to look. And sometimes," Jack added, "they find you on the days when you need them most." As the afternoon sun streamed through the diner windows, casting warm light on this gathering of unlikely friends, Greenfield continued its quiet existence. Life went on, people worked, children played, seasons changed. But the town had been marked by what had happened, transformed by the courage of a few and the resilience of one small girl. The Iron Riders returned to their regular routines, but they were no longer viewed with suspicion by most townspeople. They had proven themselves to be exactly what they had always been, flawed people trying to do right by their community. The Harpers began to heal, slowly but surely. Lily continued her therapy and gradually regained her confidence. David's victim advocacy work gave meaning to his past mistakes. Jennifer found strength she didn't know she possessed. And Marcus learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is forgive yourself. And somewhere in the midst of all that healing and growing and continuing on with life, the story of Lily Harper's abduction became not just a tale of darkness and fear, but a testament to the power of community, the possibility of redemption, and the truth that heroes don't always look the way we expect them to. They sometimes wear leather jackets and ride motorcycles. They sometimes speak with rough voices, but have gentle hearts. They sometimes live on the margins of society, but rush to its center when someone needs help. And they remind us all that we have the capacity to make a difference, to show up when it matters, and to be the answer to someone's desperate prayer, even when we never expected to be heroes at all. Did this story touch your heart? Did the journey of Lily, her family, and the Iron Riders resonate with you in some way? If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below sharing what part of the story impacted you most. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear this message of hope and courage, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit and the unexpected heroes among us. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful narratives to life. Thank you for being here, and remember, you never know when you might be called to be someone's hero.